Wedding planning is not for the faint-hearted. My partner and I got married earlier this year, and although it was the most fun and the most wholesome day ever, we still got pretty stressed out leading up to the wedding day, and all the costs started to creep up on us as well. And yeah, it just was one of those things where we even decided to pay $8 a chair for the reception for 100 people. And let me tell you, it did hurt, but we didn't want our wedding to look like an investing seminar, so we paid for it. Hey guys, it's Amy. If you're new here, welcome to my channel where I talk about all things personal finance, budgeting, career, and all the important things in life, like getting married. Earlier this year, my partner and I got married at one of the most beautiful wedding venues in Sydney. And in this video today, I'm going to be sharing with you a wedding cost breakdown of all the costs that were involved in getting married in Sydney. Now, despite how amazing and intentional the day was, it was still a day that still cost a lot of money, and we did have an initial budget that we had planned. I was around $58,000, but we did exceed that by about $10,000, and we ended up paying around $67,000 for the wedding. So yeah, it was still a pretty hefty amount for us, but we don't regret any of it because it was truly a special day for us to be able to see all of our loved ones in one space at the same time, you know, celebrating not only our love, but also of like family and friendship. Now, if you're a couple who has been recently engaged, or you are someone who is just genuinely curious about what the costs are involved in having a wedding in Sydney, you have come to the right video. Now, as my partner and I had a rather long engagement, about 1.5 years, I actually had quite a bit of time to plan, but during this time, I actually set up a wedding tracker for myself to track basically the entire wedding, from all the costs to the to-do list to like who I needed to pay and everything, because it was pretty overwhelming to, you know, have bits and pieces everywhere whilst I was wedding planning. So this really helped me throughout my wedding planning journey, and it just made the whole process so much easier. So I'll also be sharing that in this video today. So in this video today, we're going to be going through some context and background into how we decided to have the type of wedding that we wanted. You know, what were the types of conversations that we had leading up to the wedding, and how did we know, you know, this was the right thing that we wanted to do. The next thing that we are going to be going through is the wedding cost breakdown. So I'm going to be breaking down each cost category with you guys, and also sharing the amount that we budgeted and then how much we actually spent. And lastly, some honest thoughts and tips for couples who are getting married in the future. Let's get started. Now, we are going to be going through some context and background into how my partner and I decided to have the type of wedding that we wanted. What were some of the conversations that we had prior to, you know, us getting engaged and having a wedding, and basically just like even working out the budget together and everything that comes with that. I'm going to be sharing that first before we go through the cost breakdown of the wedding. Now, my partner and I had conversations about the type of wedding that we wanted prior to us getting engaged, because it was a conversation that was important to make sure that we were aligned in terms of, you know, how small or how big or how luxurious or how unluxurious we wanted the wedding to be. So it was a conversation I think we had probably 1 year before we actually got engaged. I don't remember the exact timelines, but I think because people around us, like friends, family friends, were getting married, so it was a conversation that was already, you know, lit up as part of sort of going to these events. So it wasn't something that was awkward that we had to discuss. It came sort of naturally from the events that we were going to. And basically, yeah, we both decided that we wanted a more intimate wedding, and a wedding that, you know, involved just having our family and friends there, the ones that were, you know, the most important ones to us, there at our wedding day. We didn't want anything too fancy, we didn't want anything too crazy as well, and the number that we had decided on was anything basically under 100 people. And yeah, that was actually the number we ended up sticking with. And, you know, I'm really glad that we had this conversation, because it also drove other conversations around like whether we wanted, you know, a bridal party, whether we wanted to do these other things that were usually within the traditional wedding activities route, I guess, is whatever you call it. But you know, those were the things that we didn't really want for our wedding. So yeah, we did decide that we didn't want a bridal party. We kept it pretty simple from like a logistical standpoint. You know, although initially we wanted to have a more of a semi-destination wedding, but we realized that logistically it just made so much more sense to have it in Sydney City, and that's what we did. Now, not having a bridal party was something that we were both pretty aligned on because we didn't really want to pick bridesmaids, groomsmen, and we also didn't want that added layer of stress of having to, you know, involve more people through the planning process, because there was already the family component that we had to plan for and, you know, cater for. So adding another layer was just additional stress that we didn't want. And, you know, the friends that we were going to invite to the wedding were going to be pretty close friends anyway. You know, some are like friends that we've known for a long time. You know, some are friends that we've known through like hobbies we started in our like 20s, or like through work, things like that. So we weren't going to be inviting anyone that we weren't really friends with. I guess that's why we wanted an intimate wedding of like maximum 100 people, because that really limits the amount of people you are going to invite, but then also just it really makes you think and select who you really want there at your wedding day. So having that number really helped us narrow down exactly, you know, who were those friends and family friends we wanted on the wedding day. Other things that we decided earlier on that, you know, we didn't really want was like a first dance, and even though there was moments throughout the wedding planning journey, I pondered whether it was something that we needed to do. In the end, I'm really glad we stuck with our gut feeling, because I am not a dancer. Like, I am the worst dancer ever, and having to dance in front of like 100 people with just my partner is just, I just find that really weird, and it just wasn't something that I really wanted to do, and I'm glad we did it. And because we were having these open and transparent conversations about the type of wedding we wanted and things that we didn't want and things that we wanted for the wedding day, it really helped us in the end, because we really didn't have any arguments throughout the wedding planning. It was all pretty civil, and really the only stress that came from it was just like the random costs that came up, you know, towards the wedding day, and that was really the only added stress. But other than that, it was a pretty smooth journey for us. Now, in terms of why we decided to have a wedding, is because even though a lot of people talk about like eloping and, you know, not spending the money on a wedding day, for us, I just felt like if we don't have this wedding day or party or whatever it is that you want to call it, it just feels like we won't really have that chance to have all of our loved ones in one space, in one room, to be able to capture all these memories, you know, by a talented photographer and videographer of everything. And then just being able to look back on the day is something that I don't want to like regret in the future not having, which is why in the end, even though it did hurt that it cost so much money to have the wedding, and I know like there are people out there who spend, you know, 20k, 30k, some 100k, some more than that, some way less than that. You know, it's each to their own in terms of like how much people want to spend. But for us, this number that we had budgeted, which was around $58,000 for the wedding, just based on the calculations that I had, it was a number that we were most comfortable with spending. And even though we went over by $10,000, which is roughly 16 to 17%, we still didn't regret it. And I think, and the key thing that I learned from having our wedding was that I just realized, you know, how important family and friends were, you know, to us. And you know, even though we had spent this amount of money, it was all worth it. We really don't regret it, and we had such a fun day. Now that we've gone through the context and background, we are now going to be going through the cost breakdown of the wedding, and it's going to be a very juicy part of the wedding, so make sure you keep watching. Now, as I mentioned earlier in this video, I did build a wedding tracker to basically track the entire wedding planning journey at the beginning of my wedding planning, because it was quite overwhelming not having one place where I could put all the information and plan the budget and know who we wanted to invite, and like just like things that we needed to do throughout the wedding planning journey. Once I did that, I was still tweaking and building things onto the tracker as I was planning the wedding, but it really just helped having everything in one place, and it made the whole process just so much simpler and way less stressful. And when it came time to like sharing with my partner like some of the things that we needed to do, you know, where we were at from like a budget perspective, was there anything we were over, under, as well as anything that we, still needed to hash through, we were able to do it with the wedding tracker because it was so easy to just, view it all in one place together. Now, I actually printed out the cost breakdown section of the tracker. It's basically the tab where it shows us like the budget amount, how much we actually spent per category, how much was the allocation per cost in terms of the overall cost, whether we were like over or under budget, how much we had left to pay, and then just an overall overview of like whether we were like over or under for the entire budget, how much we were like spending overall as well. And yeah, it was just a really good way for us to see like in one tab where we were at from like a cost perspective, and like anywhere we needed to adjust and plan more towards as we were leading up closer to the wedding day. Okay, so the biggest cost that pretty much any couple is going to incur is actually when it comes to the food, drinks, and the venue hire for the wedding. And I actually had to learn the difference between what a ceremony and reception was during the wedding planning journey. Even though we had gone to like weddings in the past, I still got confused between the differences. But basically, yeah, the ceremony is where the bride walks down the aisle with like the dad and or mum all together, and then the reception is basically where you host the dinner, you have games, you have your first dance, you have all the celebrations, things like that. So that's the difference. But yeah, I didn't know there was a difference prior to the wedding planning, so learned something new. And yeah, I hope for anyone else who doesn't know what it is, I hope now you know what the difference is between a ceremony and a reception. Now, in terms of the cost, yeah, the ceremony and the reception cost the most. So ceremony, reception, tea ceremony, the cost that were involved for that for me was 47% of the total amount that we had to pay for the wedding. That was roughly $31,000 that we had to pay for those things. So this included things like food, drinks, the venue hire, simple styling for the ceremony, and also that really simple styling for the tea ceremony. That added up to that $31,000. Originally, we had budgeted $28,000 for these things, but the cost that creeped up towards the end of the wedding planning journey leading up to the wedding day just started to creep up. Like paying $8 for like a wedding chair for the reception was pretty crazy. We did get like a little bit of, I guess like a discount when we actually got invoiced. But yeah, it was expensive. But yeah, we really didn't want the wedding to look like an investing seminar because the original chairs were these grey chairs. We had, decided if we were gonna be spending X amount already on everything, then $8 per chair isn't gonna bankrupt us. But yeah, it did hurt having to pay that for those chairs, because knowing we could have avoided it, but it was already towards the end. So yeah, that was just another cost that got added towards the end. We also had to pay, I think it was like these sheer curtains at the back of the reception dinner area as well. So those things added up. So then we were like overspending $3 to $4K for the ceremony, reception, and tea ceremony component of the cost. In terms of like the budgeting approach to like calculating that, I basically took the cost per head for the venue times by the amount of people that were coming. So we estimated 100 guests, and per head it was around $200 plus per person, plus GST, plus like additional food we added. So that came to around like $25,000, but then we had to add on like venue cost and everything. So that was like the $28K mark, but then yeah, adding on those additional costs sent us to that like $31,000 for that. And then yeah, that led up to pretty much half of the cost of the wedding. Now the venue that we decided on is a beautiful French heritage building in the city. It's one of the oldest buildings in Sydney, and we decided on this venue because it was one of the most convenient venues that we could have picked. Especially considering we've got more elderly family that needed to come to the wedding, so it made more sense to pick somewhere that was the best from like a location per standpoint, and going home was like super easy as well. Like you just take an Uber. Now the next cost is photos, videography, and photo booth. Now this cost made up about 16% of the entire wedding cost. We had originally budgeted 9.1k roughly for this component, but we spent around 10k instead for the totality of these costs. Now we budgeted this amount for the wedding because photos and videos is something that we're going to be able to keep forever. So we didn't want to be like spending only a little bit on this component, and we wanted to make sure that we were hiring basically the best people for this component of the wedding, because I want to be able to look back on our wedding video and feel like, you know, I'm getting sent back to the wedding day. I want to be able to look at the photos and feel like, you know, a flood of like emotions when I'm looking through everything. And to be able to get those type of feelings from photos and videos, you really do need to hire, you know, people that really understand and are really good at what they do. And yeah, we were willing to spend more on this part of the wedding. The budget for the photos and videos and photo booth ended up going over budget because we ended up adding a second videographer and a second photographer to the wedding day to be able to capture more angles and more moments. Having just the one we realized wasn't enough, and we also consulted with our videographer and photographer in terms of like whether we needed more like people as well, and we were both in agreement. So we ended up having a team of 4, so like 2 videographers and 2 photographers on the day capturing all the special moments. Now the next cost area is attire, wear, and makeup. Now this made up 13% of the total cost that we incurred for the wedding. Initially we had budgeted 4.5 grand for this, but we actually spent 7.5 grand, so almost double. Now there is a reason for this, and we will be going through it, but I'll go through what I planned for my wedding outfits, jewelry, and makeup first, and then we'll go through my partner's. So for mine, I didn't actually value getting a traditional wedding dress or gown. I didn't want to spend that much money on the wedding dress because it was something that I was only going to wear once. I wanted to wear something that represented me and something that I would feel the most comfortable with, something that made me feel good. So I actually got a wedding suit instead of wearing a traditional wedding gown. I did get a dress, a really simple satin dress for this ceremony, but pretty much the entire day I wore this beautiful ivory wedding blazer, shorts, and these heels for basically, yeah, the most of the day. So a lot of the photos are me in my, you know, mini suit, and then the dress was literally 1 hour of the day during ceremony, and I'm glad I did that because I have not touched the dress since, and I only paid like, I think I paid just under $200 for my satin dress, and for my suit I paid in combination, like the top, the blazer, the shorts, it was almost $1,000, and then I had to get like everything, you know, tailored and altered, but it was all worth it. So in total I spent just over 3k for everything from like my attire and wear perspective. That included like things like heels, jewelry, like the suit that I mentioned, the dress, alterations, everything that basically comes with like the outfits and like what I wore. And even though I went over budget, I am able to wear most of the things I purchased for the wedding. A lot of the jewelry, the heels, the blazer and the suit and the top are things that I can rewear, and I have been re-wearing the jewelry as well as actually the blazer since the wedding day. So it's really awesome to be able to re-wear these things because now I can like drive the cost per use down. It wasn't just like me buying it just for the wedding. I wanted to make sure the things that I was buying for the wedding were things that I was able to reuse at least, you know, more than a couple of times, because it does hurt like being able to buy something and not being able to wear it again. That's why I didn't want to spend that much on a wedding dress, because a wedding dress is like something you're not really going to be able to wear again, aside from your wedding day. And I'm really glad I didn't spend, you know, thousands on a wedding dress, because it's something that I don't really value, and I would rather spend that money on like photography and videography for the day. For my partner, for his one, we actually went over budget because we had a really poor experience going to a normal suit shop that was like a franchise. When we walked in, we just had a really bad customer service, and we felt like nothing in there suited him. So we ended up going to a boutique suit shop out in like the Paddington part of Sydney. We were able to find this suit shop basically on Google. It had amazing reviews, and when we went there, the service was literally one-on-one service. The suit was completely custom made. His shoes were also custom made. But the reason why we decided to spend more money from that component was because these are things that he can rewear again and again, and he's actually going to be wearing it this weekend to an event. So I think for us, it was really important that we were spending money on things that we were able to reuse. Now, the cost for makeup and hair in Sydney is ridiculously expensive. There were some vendors that I had reached out to. They were charging like $1,500 just to do bridal makeup, and that didn't even include touch-up for the day as well. And as I was reaching out to different like people throughout the sort of wedding planning journey, I didn't book a makeup and hair artist that early because I really wanted to like find one that was good but also affordable. I ended up finding a really awesome makeup and hair artist who wasn't charging an arm and a leg, and who also was doing the makeup style that I wanted for the wedding. It was more on the natural side. It was like a natural glam rather than like a glam, and that was sort of the vibe that I was going for my wedding look. So in total, I paid 1.2k for hair and makeup. That included my bridal makeup on the day, my mum's makeup, as well as makeup and hair trial before the wedding. And yeah, I think that was like super reasonable because she was really good, and you know, she wasn't charging an arm and a leg, and she was just a really awesome person. So I was more than happy to support her small business, and yeah, it was just it was exactly what I wanted. Having the trial before the actual wedding day makeup was money that was well spent because I learned about what I wanted, and then like I was able to give her feedback, and then on the actual wedding day, yeah, she really delivered, and I'm really happy that I got the look for the hair and the makeup that I wanted. Now, the next category of cost was floral, stationery and styling. This made up 7% of the actual total cost. We spent about 4.6k in totality for all of these categories. Now, we intentionally kept the budget low for these categories because these were mainly from an aesthetic point of view rather than like adding true value. So I didn't want to spend more than like 5k for everything for this area. Even for florals, I even contemplating it doing myself because I just couldn't really justify the price of paying for florals, and it's beautiful and it looks awesome like to have on the day, but yeah, I just couldn't justify paying like more than like 4k for that, and I was really glad that I was able to find a florist that didn't charge an arm and a leg. I remember getting quoted like $10,000 just to have basic floral arrangements for the wedding. I was genuinely surprised by some of the quotes that I was receiving from florists, and I'm just really glad in the end I was able to find a florist that was not charging an arm and a leg. Her prices were really reasonable, and she was super easy to work with. I had some changes throughout sort of the wedding planning journey. She was able to cater for it, which is really awesome, and I'm just glad that I didn't spend that much on it, because after the wedding I realized that, you know, I was only able to keep like a little bit of it, and then after about a week they died anyway. So yeah, I think this is a cost where people can fall into paying a lot for. So for these types of like categories, I think it's so important to like do a lot of research, because you are gonna be able to find a florist that's gonna be able to fit within your budget. And I was not budging with mine. I did not want to spend more than like 4k, like I mentioned, on florals. So yeah, it was just felt really good that I didn't have to go over budget for these categories. A lot of the stationery and styling items I actually purchased myself online. I did a lot of things on Canva. I did a lot of things like on Figma, like I did everything myself, printed them out through like different websites online that I could find that were the most affordable but good quality. And then once I had everything like printed and delivered to me, I actually asked my florist to help me style the reception and the ceremony. And even though she was already doing the florals, which is part of the styling, I paid her like, I think it was like $200 to add on just to style the rest of the menus and the name tags and everything for us. It was really awesome. I also got like these candles as well that she helped us style and put on the tables, because our wedding we weren't allowed to have real candles. So yeah, it was just really awesome working with her, and like she didn't charge an arm and a leg, and like she was super just genuine. And I think when it comes to weddings, I just realized like there are some vendors and suppliers out there that truly just charge an arm and a leg because a wedding is slapped on it. And for these like categories, I didn't want to like outsource too much of it. You know, I had the ability to do some of the things myself, so that's why I was able to keep these costs within the budget and lower compared to all the other costs for the wedding. Now the next area of cost is DJ, MC, celebrant and line dancing. Now this made up 8%, so very close to the floral, stationery and styling components. In terms of like how much we spent, it was around 5k for all of these things. It was very close to what we had originally budgeted as well. We didn't want to spend like an overboard amount of like music and entertainment for the wedding, but having a DJ was really important for the wedding because it really does set the mood for the night. We did consider having like a live band, but that was like way out of budget. It was like 3 or 4 grand to hire them just to have them for like 2 to 3 hours, and I just really couldn't justify that cost. And I think having a DJ was the perfect sort of type of vendor to have, because they were able to do music during ceremony, but they were also able to play throughout this reception night as well. Basically any music we wanted. Whereas a live band, there you're tied to having a specific type of genre and music played. So it made more sense for us to have a DJ, but I know a lot of weddings out there, they have both. But for us, it was picking one or the other, and DJ made the most sense from like a music choice perspective, but also just like being able to play sort of the longest throughout the night without having to worry about like what time they had to leave. Initially, we also considered doing MCing ourselves, but we realized later on that that was going to be way too much work. So we decided that we will hire an MC, and she was actually the same lady that we had for our tea ceremony as well as our ceremony. We decided to go with the one person because she was able to do all of these things already. She could speak English as well as Cantonese, so Chinese, and that was what we wanted for the ceremony. And then tea ceremony, the MCing part of hiring her was also a no-brainer because she was able to speak English and Cantonese as well. And we're really glad that we spent the money on the MC because it was definitely much needed. We realized that we were actually doing a lot of talking throughout like the day, the wedding day, and like then leading up to like the ceremony and reception. Like it's actually really hard to do MCing yourself, so I'm glad that we didn't go down that route. It doesn't also make sense to ask a friend to be an MC as well, because then they don't get to enjoy the wedding. So yeah, it made a lot of sense to hire an MC, and I'm really glad we did. Another thing that we had budgeted for the wedding was line dancing, and this was a component of the wedding where we really felt like our family, friends were able to really connect with, I guess, the wedding day, because line dancing is a really special thing in the Asian culture. And line dancing is something that you do when you are celebrating something. So for the wedding, it was almost like a no-brainer to have it. It was really special for us as well, as we were able to dance under the line as well. This cost was something that we were more than happy to spend because, you know, we could see how happy everyone was when we had the line dancing on the night. The lucky last area of cost that we budgeted for was accommodation and transport. We spent around 2.1k for this, and it made up around 3% of the total actual cost that we spent. We booked a hotel because we wanted a spot where we were able to go back to that was relaxing, also close to the wedding venue, so we didn't have to travel too far. It was also just a really nice way to like unwind from the wedding and like reflect together after the wedding. We also had some beautiful photos and videos that were taken at the wedding when we were getting ready at the hotel. So it was a really special moment to be able to do that at a hotel that was like beautiful. And we could have done it at home, but it just doesn't feel the same because we're always at home like all the time. You know, we work from home, we eat at home, we sleep at home. So it was really nice to change the environment, especially for the wedding. Made it really, really special. We also took a London taxi from the hotel to the wedding venue because we wanted to travel in style, to be in comfort, and also just having a moment to ourselves before the actual wedding day started. And it was expensive for the 30 minutes, but I genuinely feel like that was worth it, because I did feel like that moment from going from the hotel to the actual wedding venue was a moment where we were able to really soak up that we were gonna get married and, you know, see all our family and friends at the wedding venue. So yeah, it was a really special moment. And the funniest thing it was that I actually wanted to save on the transportation part, but we ended up booking it because we wanted to travel in style. Had we booked an Uber, it would have been a totally different experience. And I think the moment of like soaking up before the wedding day, I don't think I would have been able to get that in an Uber. So yeah, booking that London taxi was definitely money well spent. So we've basically gone through majority of the really important categories for the wedding, and that basically came to about $67,000 in actual cost for the wedding. Even though we had originally budgeted 10k less, I'm really glad that we were able to track everything in one spreadsheet, in one tracker, because if we didn't, I don't think we would actually know how much we were over. And just being able to see the categories and like knowing which one was over budget, which one was within budget, and which one was, you know, under budget, it really helped us like plan our costs and reallocate the money, especially in areas that were still under. And then obviously with areas that were over budget, we were able to like have the discussions of like whether if it was worth it, whether we still wanted to, you know, go ahead with like some of the things that we had booked or like things that we were planning towards for that category. So it was just really helpful to like they basically have everything on one page in one tracker. It really helped give us that like comfort and like visibility of like knowing where our money was going. So now that we've gone through a cost breakdown of our wedding, I'm going to be sharing some tips and reflections for all couples that are planning for their wedding in the near future. Now, the first tip that I'm going to be giving is having a budget in mind and agreeing this with your partner. Now, the budget that you're going to have might differ depending on like your financial situation, as well as, you know, the type of wedding that you want to have. But it's really important to know how much you both want to spend on the wedding depending on the type of wedding that you want to have. And it's also really important to cater for unexpected costs that come up throughout the wedding planning journey. I usually would say 10 to 15% buffer is probably the ideal amount on top of the wedding budget number that you guys have planned for, but it's just really important to know what that is so you have something to work with. The second tip is tracking all your costs, whether it's a big cost or a small cost. It's so important to know where all your outgoings are going, and it's so important to know like how much you have left per category of the amount that you budgeted per area. Now, as I mentioned, I use my own wedding tracker to basically track all the outgoings and how much we had left to pay for each vendor. And if this is something that you currently don't have, I have linked the tracker below in the caption section as well as the comment section on where you can access this. For me, it made the whole wedding planning way less stressful because I had this one place I could go to. And if this is something that you're interested, make sure you check it out because it actually might just help you plan your wedding more smoothly. The third tip is starting a wedding sinking fund early on. And whether you are a couple who is already engaged or a couple that is thinking about getting married, you can start this as earliest as you want, or you can start this as soon as you are engaged. And it's basically working out what the budget is that you want for the wedding, and then working backwards, you know, how much you need to contribute into the sinking fund every month or every week, depending on like your financial circumstances. But this could be an account that you have with your partner as a joint account, or it could be an account that you have separately. For us, I had my own one separately, and then my partner had his own one separately. It was just a lot easier, you know, for us to save that way towards the wedding. We were just really glad we had these two accounts that were already there for our wedding, because without it, we would have had to like take money out of our like normal savings, and that would have been less intentional. Whereas because we had the wedding fund set aside and we were contributing to it, it really helped us when it came to like paying wedding expenses throughout the wedding planning process. The last tip I would say is don't be afraid to break traditional wedding customs. For us, we didn't do a bridal party, we didn't do cake cutting, we didn't do a first dance, but we had, you know, the most amazing and the most wholesome, the most fun day ever without those things. We did what we felt like was the right thing to do, and we absolutely loved the day, and we know a lot of our guests and family also had an amazing day as well. So yeah, don't be afraid to break like wedding customs. Just because like people have it at their weddings, it doesn't mean you need to as well. If there are other things that you want to do on your wedding day, like it's your day, you are allowed to do what you want, and you don't have to, you know, fall into the wedding customs of like doing things because other people have done it or because that's what you're meant to do at a wedding. So I think it's really important to work out what you value and what's intentional for you. Just as it's important to work out what your budget is for your wedding and knowing which costs you are more willing to spend money on because you value it more versus the costs that don't really add that much value, but you still need to spend a little bit of money on it. But yeah, it's just working out that fine balance. Thanks for watching this video today, guys. I hope this wedding cost breakdown as well as the tips I've shared is able to help you through your wedding planning journey, whether you are an engaged couple or whether you are thinking about getting married in the near future and you are unsure about the costs that are involved in a wedding, or if you're someone who was genuinely interested in learning about what the costs are involved in planning a wedding. I hope my video was able to teach you a thing or two today. If you enjoyed this video today, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more content like this in the future. And lastly, if you have any questions about the wedding, whether it's about the wedding vendors or the cost breakdown or the wedding tracker, make sure you leave a comment below. Thanks guys, and see you next time.